Jewels of the Alps. The 5 largest lakes of Upper Italy. Born of glaciers, shaped by water, tamed by the human hand. They tell stories of nature and culture. In the rhythm of the seasons, they all show a changing face. Each in its own way. Midsummer on Lake Garda. A Mediterranean-style getaway at the southern edge of the Alps. "20,000 years ago, however, the landscape here looked completely different because Lake Garda is a product of the Ice Age. Origins it shares with the other lakes of Upper Italy, all born of the age-old ice and snow. They now dot the southern Alps like a strand of glittering, watery jewels. Lake Garda takes its shape from a prehistoric glacier tongue, framed at the upper tip by steep mountains, with a broad southern base opening out onto the Po River Valley. During the last ice age, glaciers dominated this terrain. Nowadays, they are found only on the high alpine peaks north of the lake. "20,000 years ago, the Alps were buried under a massive ice layer up to 1,500 meters thick. When temperatures on Earth again climbed, the glaciers melted, leaving behind deep valleys full of water. One of them is Lake Garda. 52 kilometers long, with a maximum depth of 346 meters, it is Italy's largest lake. On closer inspection, signs of its turbulent past are clearly evident. Everywhere, the post-Ice Age terrain shows scars of the icy forces of nature. In recent decades, current climate change has accelerated the rate of glacial melting many times over. The former ice giants have retreated to the Adamello Brenta group, an alpine massif that towers to heights of up to 3,500 meters and supplies today's Lake Garda with its meltwater. At this altitude, summer seems very far away indeed. From here, the water flows southwards, connecting the glacier with the lake like an ancient umbilical cord. waterfalls feed into the Sarka River. Narrow valleys and deep, dark gorges channel it along to the sunny shores of Lake Garda. On its way there, the Sarka flows through a broad valley of the same name, carved out by a glacier of old. Its journey ends at the northern shore of the lake. In peak season, the region's distinctive winds attract mainly water sports enthusiasts. The north wind Peler blows in the morning. In the afternoon, the wind comes from the south and is called the Ora. This natural phenomenon is especially pronounced at Lake Garda, offering ideal conditions for surfers and sailors. The many aquatic birds mostly keep well away from the action. Goosanders especially stick close to shore as long as traffic out on the lake is so heavy. They can often be found at the mouth of the Sarka, where fish and clear water are plentiful. Because goosanders are expert fishers. Out on the open water, they often join forces in larger groups. There's safety in numbers. But as soon as half of the team has dived down for fish, the other half loses interest in the collective outing. Mute swans are much less timid than goosanders. In summertime, many of them gather on the Sarka. It then remains their refuge for the weeks ahead. Elegant and svelte on the water, on land, with 10 kilograms to bear, they seem rather awkward. It was the time of year to pay more attention than usual to plumage grooming. In molting season, they exchange all their feathers for a whole new suit. Which leaves the swans unable to fly for a whole 2 months. Until late summer, they are grounded on the northern shore of Lake Garda. The mouth of the Sarka River lies in the shadow of Monte Brione, which towers 300 meters above. The mighty mountain mass shows how primordial tectonic forces once formed the rock layers. Montebrione owes its present-day form to the glaciers that repeatedly pushed through the valley during the Ice Age. Atop Montebrione, alpine and Mediterranean flora and fauna face off at close quarters. An exotic oasis at the edge of the Alps. Tyrol and Austria are just a few hours' drive away. Right at the lakeside, Riva del Garda. A little medieval town with fortifications and a port, once a strategically significant border post of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Back then, the fortified castles were manned to secure the hotly contested border between Austria and Italy. Nowadays, Riva del Garda is only ever overrun by tourists. On warm summer nights, visitors flood the charming old town. With more than 22 million visitors a year, Lake Garda is now one of the world's most popular vacation destinations. Since 1918, Riva del Garda has belonged to Italy. But the national borders didn't used to be drawn along haphazard political lines. The steep cliffs on the western shore long served as a natural, almost insurmountable frontier. An easy drive along the lakeshore has only been possible since 1931. Mussolini ordered the construction of the famous highway Gardesana Occidentale. 70 tunnels were blasted in the process. With that, the once arduous 10-kilometer journey from Riva del Garda to its coastal neighbor Limona sul Garda became a road trip of just minutes. Limona sul Garda is perched on a narrow strip of land beneath the steep cliff coastline. Nowadays, the 1,000 residents of Limona welcome over 10 times that many visitors daily. The picturesque little harbor is only one of the attractions. The old cobblestone lanes and historic architecture are the main draw for tourists. This place of romantic charm was once the home of poor fishing and farming families trying to coax a meager existence from the barren land. Centuries ago, they took a chance on something new. Lemon plantations, a bold experiment in this terrain. But steep terraced gardens and a lot of hard work paid off in the end. Limona sul Garda went on to become Europe's foremost lemon producer. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the town even supplied citrus fruit to the court of the Russian Tsars. Lemons are no longer farmed here, but some of the terraces have been lovingly restored to preserve the special history of the town. Although it wasn't that long ago that the citrus trade still flourished in Limona. The village elders, such as Franco Usardi, still remember those days. Steep cliffs, poor soil, and bitter winters are not exactly promising prerequisites for citrus farming. But 500 years ago, when Franciscan monks first introduced lemon trees to the area, the farmers had found a solution.
When we decided to cultivate lemons here on Lake Garda, in Limona in particular, we didn't have the ideal land for it. We do have the ideal land for olive trees. We have big olive orchards, but not for citrus fruit. The problem was solved by taking boatloads of soil from the other side of the lake, the ideal soil for citrus fruit. It was unloaded here in the marina, carried up the narrow streets, and spread in our terraced gardens, so we too could grow our beautiful citrus fruit. Just think of the hard work those people had to do here 300, 400, 500 years ago.
The local climate presented another challenge. The winters here are actually too cold for citrus fruit.
The front can be closed with glass panels, and the roof completely covered with boards. Basically, it's a greenhouse all winter long. That enables us to grow citrus fruit even here in the north.
An over 300-year-old above-ground irrigation system still supplies the gardens with water today. Thus, over the centuries, arose Limona's flourishing trade in lemons, shipped off by the boatload from the little lakeside port. Franco Usardi tends the lemon trees still grown in the historic gardens of the Limonaia del Castel. His childhood memories are a living history lesson.
When I was a child, my grandfather worked here in the lemon groves, and he always took me along when he planted the lemon trees. So, even as a child, I came to love these wonderful plants. And then, when the municipality turned the lemon gardens into a museum, it became my passionate pursuit to come here every day and check on the plants, to make sure they're growing well.
Leaving the small strip of land that is Limona sul Garda, it's an almost vertical uphill climb. Even now, the drive up into the mountains is still risky business. The old, narrow roads are hewn right out of the rock. They cut through gorges and along high cliff edges with a 350-meter drop to the water below. Here, the Mediterranean flair of the lakeshore gives way to the coniferous forests and meadows of the Alpine foothills. Mountain passes provide connecting routes between the valleys for both humans and animals. That goes for birds, too. The annual avian migration begins in late summer. At Lake Garda, scientists study the phenomenon. At an altitude of over 1,600 meters, right on the crest of the pass, lies the research station Bocca di Cassette. Odd-looking rows of fine nets stretch for kilometers along the mountain crest. Their job? To catch migratory birds. The birds expend a lot of energy reaching these heights. That's why they fly only a few meters above the ground. And straight into the trap. Paolo Pedrini from the Science Museum Muse in Trento is lead scientist on the project.
Here at Bocca di Cassette, we've been monitoring the migration of birds since 1992. Every year, from August to September, we study the birds on their annual migration from northern and central Europe over the Prealps. They then fly on to their winter quarters in the Mediterranean region and parts of Africa.
A network of biologists throughout Europe monitors the migration routes.
All migratory birds from Central Europe, such as finches, sparrows, and siskins, travel over these passes. On a good day, we ring about 300 to 400 birds. The catch varies from between 6,000 and 14,000 a year. This year, we've had some particularly interesting species, such as the crossbill. They fly during the day and have already begun their migration, searching for nesting places in the higher alpine regions because they begin to nest in the winter.
Now, in late summer, the nets were being checked hourly. Each captured bird is tucked away in a soft little cloth sack. The darkness is calming. At the research station, the birds are examined and their data recorded. Health status, species, age, and size. One piece in a pan-European puzzle. The subjects are then set free to continue their flight southwards.
Many migratory species pass by Bocca di Cassette, but one of them is especially dear to my heart, the Eurasian siskin.
In this case, he was examining a tiny little gold crest, which looks very much like a Eurasian siskin.
The Eurasian siskin is a little yellow-green songbird that migrates from late September till late fall. In some years, they appear here in very great numbers. Sometimes we ringed more than 3,600 of them. It's a typical forest bird, but it comes from a very long way off. The Eurasian siskins that pass by here come from Central and Northern Europe, but mainly from Scandinavia and Russia.
With so many birds, the odd test subject manages to get away too soon. The bird numbers are impressive, but they used to be much higher. Because trap nets like these have been in use since the mid-19th century. Back then, the birds were prized delicacies. Between 20 and 30,000 were snared per season on this mountain pass alone. The hunting of these birds is now strictly forbidden. The scientists have a special exemption to use the old net technique for modern, non-lethal purposes.
It's always very exciting to hold an animal in your hand and to see it up close, all the details. But you have to keep your emotions under control and take great care so that they can fly off again and return to their natural habitat.
Some of the migratory birds, such as the crossbill, travel in flocks, so the researchers set them free again all at once. The aim of the continuous monitoring: to protect the routes of Europe's migratory birds. The steep banks of Lake Garda are only 10 kilometers away as the crow flies. There are few large beaches, but many picturesque bays. And quite a few of them are home to some highly unusual animals. What at first glance looks like a hummingbird is in fact an insect. A large moth on the lookout for nectar. Despite the rocky shores, red valerian flowers flourish. The dearth of summer blooms here make them a main draw for insects of all kinds. The hummingbird hawk moth stands out among them. With a wingspan of almost 45 millimeters, it's relatively large, and its long hair looks very much like plumage. And, unusually for a moth, it approaches the blooms in hovering flight mode, hence the name hummingbird hawk. Some 85 wing beats per second keep it suspended in midair. The advantage? Extraordinary agility and precision, ideal for dipping the long proboscis into the flower in flight. The disadvantage? Hovering takes a lot of energy. Hummingbird hawk moths have to work hard to fill up on nectar. They tap as many as 100 blossoms per minute. But the insect is not actually related to the hummingbird. These moths are an example of convergent evolution, when unrelated organisms independently evolve similar traits, often in response to similar environmental conditions. The mountainous terrain in the north of Lake Garda is a striking expression of geological history. The narrow valley with its steep rock faces dominates about a third of the lake and the surrounding landscape. Only farther south do the steep mountains give way to more gently rolling hills. Right at this intersection lies the Isola del Garda, the largest island in the lake. Here, far from the tourist hordes, an ambiance of slow living reigns. Time seems to have stood still. For the last 1.5 centuries, the island has been owned by the Cavazza family. They transformed the once barren rock into a blooming oasis. The stately home was built in the early 20th century in the Venetian neo-Gothic style. With its distinctive architecture, it has dominated the island ever since. But the story of the Isola goes back considerably farther, as Countess Alberta Cavazza explains.
The island is a marvelous place. It's been inhabited by the Romans, the Lombards, the monks of San Zeno di Verona, and the Franciscans, who stayed for about 600 years. Since 1817, it's been a private family estate.
The Cavazza family forebears realized their personal design vision on the island. The upkeep of the gardens and the palazzo is costly and time-consuming. Keeping the stately ancestral home in good repair and open for visitors is a full-time job. The island is a nature paradise. On this tiny patch, the family has created a lush biodiversity. The Isola del Garda is in fact a mere 1 kilometer long, with a maximum width of just 70 meters.
To go from one terrace to another is to enter a new dimension. We go from the English garden to the Mediterranean garden, from the exotic garden to the formal Italian one. Right behind me is one of my favorites. There we have a combination of Mediterranean, exotic and English nature, a bit of everything.
When the gardens were first terraced like this over 100 years ago, it was a monumental feat.
It took about 40 years and an insane amount of work to achieve. Most of the soil to make the island park was brought over from the nearest peninsula. But there were no motorboats back then, just simple barges, so laborers were very important. Over 300 people were involved in the work.
This hard-won soil supply enabled the creation of the vivid gardens on the craggy rock floor of the Isola del Garda. And the plants were soon followed by animals. More than 120 bird species come and go every year. Even mangroves thrive in little inlets, a hint of the tropics in the middle of Lake Garda. Among the forest dwellers, whimsical wooden sculptures. As well as exotic animal species.
We have a wonderful parrot that arrived here all on its own about 5 years ago. He slowly gained confidence and developed a great friendship with our mother. He plucks leaves from the tree and throws them, aiming right for the head of the person talking to her. Parrots are known to have the intelligence of a 5-year-old child, so it's no wonder. And he's very jealous. If she doesn't give him enough attention, he gets very nasty.
The Cavazza family still resides on the island today.
Why leave the island when it has all this to offer? A little world of your own in the middle of Lake Garda, a place of harmony, peace, and serenity.
And that's hard to find in high summer with bumper-to-bumper traffic on the narrow roads along the lakeshore.
The island is truly unique, dare I say unique in the world. And it's a part of me because I was born here and grew up here. And every part of the island still brings me real well-being in body and soul today.
The rugged north of Lake Garda offers a stark contrast to the Mediterranean island. But here too, late summer brings a sea of fresh blossoms, a peat bog in the nature reserve near Fiave. The Torbiera di Fiave is one of the largest peat bogs in the Trentino region. It emerged after the last ice age. The moor landscape is an important biotope for flowers and especially for insects. When the last cold period came to an end and the climate warmed up again, there was a lot of rain. That, combined with the masses of water released by the melting glaciers, led to high groundwater levels. Valleys and depressions were flooded. Dead plants were unable to decay. Peat bogs developed, which are now home to a rich biodiversity. That's why the Torbiera di Fiave is a strictly protected nature reserve. The area is also home to an ancient archaeological treasure, evidence of prehistoric village communities dating back to 4000 BC. The remains of wooden huts were found in a former glacial lake. Pile dwellings perched above and by the water. They are relicts of a very long history of settlement. Numerous archaeological finds from the lakebed include Baltic amber and gold. Fiave was evidently situated on a key ancient trade route. Nowadays, the lake is home to fish and amphibians. And the prehistoric posts have long since been assigned a new function. Everywhere, the landscape reveals traces of former glaciers. Not far from the northern shore tower the high peaks of the Adamello Brenta group. Up here, you get an impression of how things looked down at Lake Garda during the last ice age. There, too, mountain peaks jutted out of the ice cover back then, creating islands of alpine life. Despite sparse vegetation, the Massif peaks have a surprising number of such spots, where flora and fauna, such as chamois and ibex goats, are well adapted to the environment. To thrive here, a life form must be equipped to cope with a harsh climate and rough terrain. At altitudes above 3,000 meters, summer comes to an abrupt end. In August, the peaks are already dusted with powdery snow. High time for the locals to prepare for a long winter ahead. Marmots are extremely watchful. Danger lurks everywhere. Their behavior is precisely adapted to the harsh alpine environment. Now was the time to build up the fat reserves. Marmots are large rodents. In late summer, a well-fed marmot can tip the scales at 8 kilos, twice as much as the average house cat. It was also time to make hay while the sun shines, to keep the burrow comfy during the long hibernation. Marmots live in family groups. A sentry posted at the burrow entrance sounds the alarm when danger nears. whatever the weather. Their warning calls can be heard far and wide. Now, they would just have to be patient until the air was clear. The snow-covered fields near the summit are also home to an animal whose ancestors go back to the Ice Age. The ptarmigan. These birds are masters of camouflage. They molt 3 times a year in a seasonal cycle. They are well equipped for the cold, their feet feather-clad for a moon boot effect, protecting the delicate extremities from frostbite. In August and September, they gather in large groups. In a few months, they would all be wearing white. But now, in late summer, their plumage matched the gray rock of the Adamello-Brenta Massif. While up in the mountains, fall was already in the air, down on the banks of Lake Garda, summer was in full swing. Even in September, it was still hot. At the far south of the lake, the Alps seem worlds away. The Sirmione Peninsula juts out almost 3 kilometers into the water. This castle, placed to protect the southern shore, has stood here since the 4th century, the twilight of the Roman age. In the centuries that followed, its owners changed frequently. About 700 years ago, the ruling family of Verona took charge, the Scaligeri. The castle is named for them, a rare example of an intact medieval port fortification. It was erected at a strategically critical site, the gateway to the peninsula. Surrounded on all sides by water, 2 drawbridges provide the only access to the fortress. Its purpose was not just to repel external enemies. The population within sometimes rebelled against the rulers as well. The southern end of Lake Garda was a desirable destination long before the Veronese took over. At the very tip of the Sirmione Peninsula is perched the Grotta di Catul, the remains of a Roman villa named after the poet Gaius Valerius Catullus. The wealthy families of Verona all summered on Lake Garda 2,000 years ago, and so too did he. Nowadays, olive trees grow within the ancient walls. But the site still conjures up images of its former glory. The ruins have witnessed millennia of human settlement on Lake Garda. My Sirmio, you jewel of all peninsulas and all the islands of the crystal lakes and the great oceans Neptune circles, how delightedly, how gladly I return, wrote Catullus of his sojourn at Lake Garda, and his words still ring true for this jewel of Upper Italy today.